This morning, the final week before the election, what early voting tells us about turnout. The Texas Secretary of State, John Scott, oversees elections and is taking our questions from the Capitol. Harris County with an early warning that election results will likely be late on November the 8th. The new man in charge of voting there, Cliff Tatum, explains what's going on. In Dallas, Proposition A gives voters a chance to change downtown and Fair Park significantly. But will a tourist tax fully pay for it? Former Mayor Mike Rawlings, a Prop A supporter, takes our questions. And growing pressure for DPS Director Steve McCraw to step down after his department's failure in Uvalde. McCraw infuriated victims' families, refusing to resign. But can he really command public trust going forward? And Governor Greg Abbott changes his mind on casino gambling, saying he will now at least listen to proposals.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good morning to our viewers across the state. Lots to cover this morning, so let's get right to it with the top political headlines across Texas. Major Las Vegas casinos are finally getting something they want here in this state, and that is for Governor Abbott just to listen. Governor Abbott says he is now open to hearing what casinos want to do in the state. He's always rebuffed them before. The Houston Chronicle broke this story. We do know that major casinos are already lobbying lawmakers and local leaders across Texas. But getting gaming here, though, that still requires changing the state constitution. Another record broken on the border. 2.4 million migrants have been arrested on the southern border this year. That's the most ever, and it's a brand new number from U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. What's most startling about this, though, these migrants are still entering, despite Texas Republicans spending more than $2 billion a year to try to stop it. And Democrat Mike Collier is asking Texas TV stations to stop airing an attack ad against him. Collier is running for lieutenant governor, as you know, against Dan Patrick, and this ad of Patrick's claims that Collier's would support open borders and dismantle immigrations and customs enforcement, among other things. But Patrick does not cite any of that in the ad and says he stands by his commercial. Collier says these are all outright lies. A little more than a week out now until the election, and this morning we're talking to the man in charge of it all in Texas, Secretary of State John Scott. Even as we head into the midterm election, though, his office is still asking questions to Harris County about the last presidential election. The state's audit of the 2020 election is now overdue. It was expected in September. We reached Secretary Scott at his office at the state capitol, where he is preparing for a late evening next week. Mr. Secretary, it's good to see you again. I want to ask you about the Texas election and whether it's going to be safe. That seems like it's on a lot of people's minds. What do you tell Texas voters?
I think it's going to be the safest, most accessible election we've ever run.
The Houston Chronicle had a story the other day that caught our attention, and it was talking about Harris County saying that its reporting of results might be delayed. Of course, Harris County is in Houston, the largest populated county in the state and one of them in the country. But if there are any statewide races that are close, Harris County's numbers really could postpone finding out who the winner is.
Yeah, and we ran into that at the last election. If you remember, we were waiting on the primary results, and it ended up needing to get a court order to extend the time for counting. They've got, like you say, the largest number of precincts for that large county. And just from a logistics standpoint, it's very difficult with everything hitting perfectly. So if they run into any snags, that absolutely will delay the results.
Do you expect it's going to be a late night because of Harris County?
Yes.
There's still an audit underway of the 2020 election results in the four largest counties in the state. Phase 2 is supposed to be complete in September. We discussed what's happening in Harris County, how you're asking for more information. When will Phase 2 be complete and we hear a report from your office?
We will definitely get it out in December.
Why the delay in that?
Well, we want to make sure that a county has the opportunity to address some issues. And it's been a huge impact in Harris County, for instance. Things that they did not believe existed. They found some of those, some folks in the county attorney's office, the county clerk's office that actually knew of a location of some of the materials they were looking for. And so we definitely would have liked to have this thing out, but it'll get out in December. Even if it's a footnote that they said they're still looking for it, it'll be out.
Did any other counties besides Harris County receive letters from your office?
No.
Harris County was the only one?
They are.
Have you found anything between all four of the counties in the 2020 election audit, anything that concerns you that might be a red flag there? Because phase one didn't really seem to have anything huge in there. Has phase two developed anything?
What we found is a lot of processes that were in different counties that were not followed, the results of which some give room for people to, and that's one of the things we're hoping takes place, is they give room to narratives to be attached to them. We want to make sure that we put out a factual finding here that people can look at and go, well, that's not what that means. There's no proof of what you're alleging. And I think that's the other part of it, which is I hope this transparency brings a lot less misinformation or disinformation out into the system.
Mr. Secretary, we appreciate the time and always taking our call.
Thank you, Jason. Have a great weekend.
There's growing pressure now for the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety to resign after the massacre of fourth graders in Uvalde. At a hearing last week, Director Steve McCraw infuriated victims' families, telling them he would not quit. Remember, 91 state troopers were on scene there back in May, and they waited more than an hour to confront that gunman with other law enforcement officers. One trooper already fired, others are under investigation, and McCraw blamed local cops from the beginning. Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez, now the first major GOP official to say McCraw has to go. Let's bring in Ian Mitra now. He is the senior managing editor of the Texas Tribune. Ian, it's always good to see you. Could McCraw's tenure really be close to an end?
It's an interesting question that comes up, as we're heading close to the election here. Obviously, as you mentioned, this week, the director was speaking at the Texas Public Safety Commission, a commission that oversees DPS. And basically, McCraw said that at this point, he didn't see that the agency had failed in terms of the Uvalde school shooting. He says the investigation's not continuing, but he's resisted calls for it to resign. And there were including families of victims and relatives who were there calling on him to resign. So, this is a continuing thing. The pressure is growing. And that, as you mentioned, with U.S. Representative Tony Gonzalez also tweeting basically for McCraw to resign, the pressure is mounting.
Yeah, and Gonzalez represents that area. Quickly here in the final second, State Board of Education, usually a sleeper race there for those seats. Critical race theory has changed that, though.
It's true. Like, there's a lot of attention on these races. I mean, obviously, this is also following lots of very tense school board races across the state, particularly around the debate over what critical race theory is and whether it's being taught and how it's being taught in schools, which is, a lot of misinformation is out there about that, but also a lot of concern about parents related about this. And so this is going to be, the state board kind of, sets the curriculum for textbooks and things for state public schools. And so, there's a lot more attention on these races than there has been in the past.
All right. I am back to you in a moment. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Coming up next here, Harris County with an early warning that Election Day might turn into a late night. We'll go to Houston in a moment to find out why it will take so long to count ballots there. First, though, former Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings urging voters to pass Proposition A. It could significantly change downtown and Fair Park. We'll break it all down for you in a moment. You're watching Inside Texas Politics. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Voters in Dallas will see Proposition A on their ballot. This is the plan to build a new convention center in Dallas and finally renovate Fair Park. A tourist tax is supposed to pay for it all, but Prop A has a lot of people talking right now, so we're asking questions this morning to former Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings, one of Prop A's biggest supporters. Mayor, good to see you again. Thank you for the time.
It's great to see you. It's been a while.
It has been a while. If this passes and Dallas gets this big state-of-the-art convention center, what kind of league does that put us in? Is it like New Orleans, San Antonio, Las Vegas, Nashville, what?
There's a kind of a top-tier group like Vegas and Chicago, and we've always been in that second tier. We're going to start to be able to compete. There's been probably 1,000 conventions a year we can't qualify for.
1,000 in Dallas?
Yeah, because we just don't have the facilities for it. It's something we've known for the last couple of decades.
Let's talk about how this would be paid for. Tourists will pay for this, is the plan, with a 2% increase in the hotel occupancy tax. But that takes Dallas's hotel occupancy tax up to 15%. That's one of the highest in the state, behind San Antonio, I believe. Are you concerned that might be a negative when conventions are looking at different cities?
You know, when you look at where the pricing of this is going to be vis-a-vis these big places, it's right in line. So I don't think we're premium priced. And I think people want what I've always heard is they want facilities. They want the right facilities. And I think when you look at what this is going to be able to do for not only the convention business, but this part of town, 30 acres around it, plus Fair Park is a big part of this. The returns are going to be fabulous.
If this gets approved, will the entire convention center as it stands today, will that get demolished at once, or what's the plan, and how long will Dallas be out of the convention business?
You know, it's still TBD. They've got to get who's going to develop it and how it's going to be built. Definitely huge parts of it are going to be demolished. There's going to be some connectivity. And I think the big areas that we couldn't have conventions in are going to be completely redone.
Here's a question though: can Dallas's budget survive a year or two that Dallas might be out of the convention business when this construction is going on? Because everyone's afraid of a property tax increase here or there, or taxpayers might footing the bill somewhere along the way.
Well, I think it's a good question because we get there's $200 million of income that come in from the business right now.
They come in from conventions?
Yeah, $200 million of economic development there. And so that is real jobs and real money. But what is going to be happening at that time is we're going to be shifting for other sort of work. 50,000 to 100,000 jobs are going to be created while we're building this. And so I think the budget's going to be fine through that. And we still can do a lot of little things as well at that convention center.
But you don't expect any local property tax increase, or you don't expect the locals here in Dallas to actually foot the bill for this?
Not at all, not at all. I think that's what's remarkable. This is going to make a huge difference, and it's not going to cost citizens and property owners any money. It's going to be folks that will be using it that come in and spend the night in our hotels.
Proposition A, as you mentioned, also covers Fair Park, $300 million in renovations there. Anybody who's been to the fair recently knows that it could use some improvements over there. But what about the surrounding area of South Dallas? I know when you were in office as the mayor of Dallas, you really worked on Southern Dallas. South Dallas has been economically depressed for decades. Will any of this spill over from Fair Park into the community around it?
Well, not only Fair Park, but I think the convention center, because you know it's right here at the crossroads between Southern Dallas and downtown. So I think you're going to have that growth take place, and in the Fair Park, the things that we're being talked about doing is not only using this money, but they're raising a lot of money to put community parks, and that's going to start to grow. Other projects will come, and I think you already see them, the plans for those things out there.
Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
On election night, if any of the statewide races are close, it could be a while before we know the winner. That's because of Harris County, Houston, which we mentioned earlier in the program here. It has a slow, methodical plan to count votes on November the 8th. There's a new man in charge of elections there. His name is Cliff Tatum, and we asked him what's going on from that county's election headquarters in Houston. Mr. Tatum, it's good to see you. I can tell you're there at Central Count. It looks like quite a bit of space behind you there, obviously, for Harris County, the largest county in the state. But let me ask you, after all the controversy there in Harris County over the delays, why is your office still depending on equipment that can only read results from two polling locations at once? Now, I've heard you and I've read you that you argue accuracy over speed. Of course, everyone wants that, but why not modernize or at least purchase a second piece of equipment that might shorten the amount of time it takes to tabulate everything?
Well, and we do have the latest equipment from the vendor, and we're comfortable and confident that that machine, that equipment will tabulate properly. Part of our strategy is to ensure that we're exercising quality control over the devices that are being read into the system. Once we see that we're able to control those particular devices, then we may actually ramp up to a third reader so that we're actually processing more results than two at a time. But the strategy, the plan right now is to see how two are going, and if we can move those two along at a rapid clip, we may not need the third one. If we need the third one, then we'd be prepared to move in that direction.
Yeah, and I think these machines can read, from what I understand, it takes about a minute to read each polling location's data. You have 782 polling locations there, so it might be 6.5 hours or so for you guys to start counting everything. How soon might you add a third machine if you decide that's the direction you want to go?
Well, the third machine is there. It's a matter of us being comfortable that the quality control is there. So as the manager of Central Count is ensuring that the readers are doing what they're supposed to do, as we're seeing it's going as we plan for it to go, then we're likely lean into the third one and get results turning that much faster.
How late are you expecting it to go on election night as far as counting all the votes?
So we've sort of done some calculations and some simulations there. And what we're seeing now at early voting is that as the polling place closes at 7 p.m., there are voters standing in line. So we're likely to see on election night that voters will be in line at least until 8 p.m. And so, but if a polling place closes at 7 p.m., we anticipate that judge will take about an hour to get their polling place packed up and get their results to us here at NRG. So I'm anticipating, without question, the first results, which would be the early voting and the mail ballot voting, the early voting from the 99 locations and the mail ballots that were processed here, that we'll release those results at 7 p.m. And then any results that come in after that will be released every hour on the hour, 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. If the judges are able to get their results to us by 10:30 at the latest, then that's where we really get into the how many results have we processed from 8 to 9, 9 to 10. And if we get everyone in by 10:30, 11 o'clock, then we're looking at those 2 to 3 drives being read at the same time, which then gets us into a 1:30, 2 o'clock. Fingers crossed.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Fingers crossed. We're looking at 1:30, maybe 2 o'clock is what we're hoping for.
Mr. Tatum, we wish you the best. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, sir.
Early voting turnout appears to be good news for Republicans so far. Lots to discuss next on the Roundtable. Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Aya Mitra is back with us from the Texas Tribune in Austin. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Bernadine Steptoe is a political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Aya, let's start with you. Early voting turnout for the first week of early voting. There was really no surge there. This seems to help incumbents in office, and in this case, Republicans statewide.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Obviously, we're the last couple of elections that we're comparing to, particularly 2020, 2018, but specifically 2018, which was the last time we had a midterm. I mean, the numbers were huge. Obviously, had a very high-profile Senate race with Beto O'Rourke challenging Ted Cruz, and obviously, President Donald Trump's first midterm election drew a lot of supporters and opponents. And so you're not seeing that level of enthusiasm right now. The numbers are showing it, but obviously we're still early in early voting.
And Bud, we've talked a lot on this program about how there are 1 million more registered voters here in the state since 2020. Early voting makes up about more than half, 60% or so of the final vote. Where is everyone?
Well, as I had said, there's no Senate race on this ticket. There's nothing really driving voters out, and there are not very vivid local races turning voters out, except in Harris County, obviously, Bear, Austin. But, there are not a lot of other campaigns besides the gubernatorial race. In particular, the Democrats have campaigned to get the young vote out, but so far, only 2% of young voters have turned out to vote. Apparently, you can take candidates to college, but you can't make students vote.
Bernadine, you are smiling as well. How concerned are you if you're running a Democratic campaign right now, Bernadine?
Well, I'd be concerned only that the reason I would be even more concerned is that usually Republicans come out on day of. So if you're seeing a lot of Republicans coming out early voting and they come out on day of, then Democrats are in trouble. But keep in mind, we're still early in early voting. And you still have the youth vote to come out. So Democrats could catch up. But if they're looking at those early voting numbers, then they could be concerned if the Republicans are true to form and come out on election day as well.
Let's shift off, Bud. I want to ask you about a story the Houston Chronicle broke, and that is Governor Greg Abbott saying he's open to at least listening now to casinos make their pitches about coming to Texas. How likely is that to happen? Because it would still require a constitutional change.
Yeah, Governor Abbott said he is willing to listen if they're going to bring professional entertainment. And I think, some of the legislative trade out there may be that if they crack down on these two-bit eight-liner game rooms and poker halls and allow only professional entertainment, then that may be one of the premises is to upgrade the quality. The governor says he's willing to listen. Beto O'Rourke says he's willing to listen, but he's not convinced. He actually, seems somewhat skeptical about it. But of course, the real person in control is Lieutenant Governor Patrick,
right,
who said that he's strongly against gambling, but he's willing to listen. Just don't think we're going to make any money off of it. He's willing to listen to the argument for tourism.
Bernadine?
I'm with Butta that the person that we should be listening to and watching is Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, because he has been against it. And at this point, given any day or week or whatever, he can be the most powerful Republican and elected official in the state of Texas.
Indeed so. And final word on this one here.
I'll just throw out one more thing, and that's that the legislature is going in with a roughly $27 billion surplus. And so, times are pretty good for the government in terms of the money they can work with. So it may not be as much momentum, but something like this is the long game, I think, for a lot of proponents.
Yeah, a long game indeed. Good deal. Ian, thank you very much. Bud, Bernadine, thank you as well. Quick reminder, too, early voting goes statewide through Friday. So if you have not cast your ballot early, please do it before Friday. If not, you can vote on Election Day, November the 8th. Have a good week.